I'm using the mic this way this morning because I realized when I got here that I have no pockets, no waistband, or anything to put the control on, so we're going to have to use it in this kind of setting today. Sorry about that. Didn't think it through this morning. I want you to picture this for just a moment. As the motorcade slowly winds through the city, thousands of people pack the streets just in hope of a glimpse of the arrival. Protective agents scan around the crowd and run alongside the limousine. Pomp and circumstance, protocol, modern symbols of position, and evidences of importance herald the arrival of the head of state. Whether they are leaders by birth or election, we honor and respect them. Now picture this. The Jews awaited for a leader who had been promised for centuries by the prophets. They believed that this leader, this Messiah, this anointed one, would rescue them from their Roman oppressors and establish a new kingdom. As their king, he would rule the world with justice. However, many Jews overlooked prophecies that also spoke of this king as a suffering servant, one who would be rejected and killed. It's no wonder then that few recognized Jesus as the Messiah. How could this humble carpenter's son be the king? But Jesus was and is the King of all the earth. Matthew was one of Jesus' 12 disciples. Once he was a despised tax collector, but his life was changed by this simple man from Galilee. Matthew wrote to his fellow Jews to prove that Jesus truly is the Messiah and to explain God's kingdom. Our scripture this morning comes from one of Matthew's accounts of the earlier teachings of Jesus from the Sermon on the Mount. From Matthew 5, verses 34 through 37, we receive these words. You only make things worse when you lay down the smokescreen of pious talk, saying, I'll pray for you, and never doing it, or saying, God be with you, and not meaning it. You don't make your words true by embellishing them with religious lace. In making your speech sound more religious, it becomes less true. Just say yes and no. When you manipulate words to get your own way, you go wrong. Our words are not only important to us, they're very important to God. When we make a commitment to someone, we really should keep it. God takes our promises very seriously, whether we do or not. Let's face it, we all have good intentions at times, and then we all fail at times to follow through. Don't say anything you don't mean. I would assume that many of us have heard that saying before, whether we have said it to someone else or not. I bet we have heard it somewhere. This advice is embedded deep within our tradition. You only make things worse when you lay down a smoke screen, saying, I'll pray for you, and then not. God be with you, and then not meaning it. You don't make your words true by embellishing them with lace. Too many times in our culture, our promises is like saying, I will do this until something better comes along. I promise I'll help unless something better happens. Our scripture this morning calls us to be true to our word, to be honest with our commitments. We may very well change our mind about something, but we still should not break our commitments and our word. Last Sunday, I began a 2-week study with our youth here at the church. We started talking about what commitment actually means and what kinds of commitments that the kids have made. And they came up with a whole lot of really good commitments. And then I sent them out to talk to some of you and to ask you what kind of commitments you make and whether your commitments are easy or hard, especially those that you make on a daily basis. We heard from many of you about the commitments that you have made to your spouse and your children. Many of you have talked about your jobs and how hard it was to fulfill your commitments to your family when your job seems to squelch some of your time. Some of you were asked about your daily spiritual commitments. We heard that you try to help your neighbors when you see them unloading groceries. You run out to their car and you help them carry them in. Or how some of you clean the snow off of your own driveway, and then if your neighbor's is still covered, that you go and you clear their driveway as well. Our kids talked about how they have made commitments to music lessons and to school activities and to being available to friends. Whether we are joining a team, an activity, or a class, God expects us to fulfill our obligations. Our volunteer work, our church, our job, our marriage, our home mortgage. We should live up to our words. In many circles today, the breaking of an oath is just standard practice. But before God, it is so much more. Let's talk for just a minute about spiritual commitments. We come here on Sunday mornings. We come for worship. Some of us come for the adult groups that are at 9:30. Sometimes we come for highway cleanup. We may do some of the fundraisers that we have scheduled. We may attend some of the fun events that the church has, and we may even be on some of the ministry teams here at the church. Think about it for a minute. Are these activities, do these describe your spiritual commitment? Don't get me wrong. All of those things are good and wonderful, and they're all important. But do they describe our daily spiritual commitments? What do you do on a daily basis that shows that you have made a connection and a commitment to God? I have to say that this is even hard for me, the daily spiritual commitment. I will be the first to admit that I tend at times to be lazy in my daily basis of commitments. I don't always pray the way that I have committed myself to. I find that there are days that I get home, I do what I want to do at home, I lay down in bed, and I fall asleep. There's no prayer at the end of the day because I'm too tired, and I just fall asleep. On some days, my reading has been kept to emails or text messages. There has been no biblical study until sometimes the week before I am supposed to preach. I have to admit, preparing for today was quite an eye-opener for me. I have a whole slew of books downloaded on this. Books of spirituality. I've started each one of them, but there's very few that I've actually finished. I downloaded a book prior to the last Lenten season that all the book had was a short reading for every single day so that I would just pull it up and read it. 2 paragraphs tops. I didn't finish that one. a commitment made but not carried out. So here is what I learned this week about commitment. The secret to honoring your commitment is to commit in full consciousness and understanding of both the value of success and the consequences of dishonoring that commitment. Commitment is not a seed that can be buried and forgotten. The successful development of commitment requires the care of conscious wisdom and honor of high self-regard. To commit means to be morally bound to do. To bind oneself and pledge oneself is a decision of honor. It's this level of principled accountability that most need to begin applying to our self-privileges more often. To say that a little easier, we need to honor ourselves more often and more completely. Are you more likely to honor a commitment made to somebody else